It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen, and we did it. We made it. Training camp is here, Logan. We were both out there this morning. I feel still sunbaked. I'm still in my everyone asks me every year, man, how you out there in a hoodie? How you out there in long sleeves? And I'm like, because I am not getting sunburned. I do not want leather skin by Friday. And so I'm still in my UV protection hoodie as we record this podcast. That's how fresh we are off the practice field, Logan. We'll do our big training camp preview today as well, even though technically it's underway. But let's start off first practice. You've been watching it back on tape as well. Yeah. What stands out for you? Because for me, I'll just say big picture, it felt very uneven today.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a classic first day of practice. You know what I mean? Like there was some really good stuff. Like I thought Montez Sweat in they just practiced a ton. They got a ton of reps in. We were just talking about that before we started. In the first 2-minute period, I thought Montez did an excellent job just winning his rushes and looking good. FA flashed. John had a nice win, but you can tell the offensive line is kind of shaking off some of that summertime rust and kind of coming along. So, it's the first day. There was a couple, kind of open guys in the way that there weren't open guys during OTAs and minicamp, which, again, it's kind of it's early. It's the first practice back. So guys are like, oh, is that I got to match that. Okay, cool. And then there was a couple interceptions, kind of weird interceptions and weird completions today. Like there was one that I remember where Cole bats the ball. Like he tries to catch the ball, but isn't
bats it up and Casimir Allen gets it.
And Casimir Allen gets it. And then a couple plays later, there's a tip ball off of like kind of a weird one go on an out route, and it bounces right to the defender in a 2-minute period. So kind of a weird day. I think guys look physically good. You know what I mean? I think that's important. And so I think overall first day, like it's the first day. There's a reason it's not open to fans, I think, because like you're kind of working through some stuff and logistically working it all out. But I think overall first day's in the books, and it was hot. A lot of adversity for those guys, and I think they handled it pretty darn good. So
yeah, I could not believe how hot it was for 9 o'clock in the morning. That was gross.
It's gonna be hotter tomorrow. So
yeah, I know. I was standing at one point during the team period. It was me, Keim, and Chick Hernandez were kind of in the back of the end zone, and I was like, I'm not gonna complain about the heat. Like it is what it is. We're all out here, but I really want to. And then like as I'm biting my tongue, Chick is like, "Hey, you guys know it's hot out here?" I can't imagine being out there in the shells, and I mean running around I'm sure feels good, but having a big old helmet on your head certainly not super fun in the heat. Let's go through a couple of key points. One, health wise today, overall a very good day. Nobody gets hurt, nobody leaves the practice field. Love that. Still some guys working back. Jamin Davis I think is going to take like a couple days probably to be fully running with the ones and getting up to speed after he didn't have any reps in the spring. I did think that was interesting that they didn't just throw him out there with the ones. So we can unpack that in a second. Only guy that was not out there today was Deron Payne, has a minor toe issue. They're keeping him out for precautionary reasons. If anything is not 100% right at this point in the year with one of your key guys, standard operating procedure, nothing to freak out about. If he's still not practicing in a week, let's get worried. Other than that, let's start off with the quarterbacks. Yeah. I thought Howell was all over the place today. And I was talking to Sam Fortier on the sideline about this. And he's like, I don't know. I thought he had a couple really good throws. I'm like, he did. He had a couple of really nice throws. He shows you the potential. He flashes a couple times. But to me, Logan, what I think today was a really, really healthy reality check, which is to say he is a guy with so much potential that I think could be really good. And my opinion hasn't changed on what he is or isn't going to be this season. But it's a good reminder for the fans that just see the potential and think about all positive, everything burgundy and gold colored glasses, that he's got a long way to go. That it's not about how good you can be. It's about how consistently you produce a positive result. And from overthrows to, missing guys to whatever, like he had stuff today that looked like a guy that hasn't played a ton of football, because that's who he is. It's going to get better. And he's got a lot of talent, and he's got great coaching around him, and all that stuff is going to help. And it is also a reminder, I think, that Eric Bieniemy's play calling and making his job easy is an essential part of success this season. But I think what you saw today was a very uneven day from Sam Howell, where you saw some of the excellent stuff that makes him special, being able to fit balls in, good ball placement at times, good rhythm, and some other downs where you're just kind of going like, what the hell was that? Because what else do you expect this time of year?
Yeah, I mean, had some misses, but I think overall, like I was generally kind of positive on the day. I would say, like it's kind of in the same way that it's the first day, and for
100%.
him to be making some throws that you feel pretty good about, and obviously there was some kind of odd misses, but I didn't feel like he was too late with anything. I didn't feel like he was too early with anything. I felt like his timing was pretty good, and there's a couple things here and there, but he made a really nice throw to Antonio Gibson in 7-on-7, kind of
Yep.
dropping in the bucket. Felt good about that, and like just generally timing, small window throws, all that kind of stuff felt really sharp. So on the whole, again, it's the first day, but it's like a C plus kind of day for him, and I think that's fine. And hopefully he continues to get better, and I think he will. I think the offense will continue to get better, and it's so weird talking about one day of practice, but it's the first day, so there was some mistakes, there was some good things. You can tell guys are kind of finding their legs a little bit, and that's just going to get better as you go. So.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's true. There was one play in particular that I was curious to ask you about. Terry had a completion where he runs an in and out route
Yeah.
on Forbes,
Yeah.
and the only reason I noted it in my
Was that
notes
ball
was
completed?
it
I
was.
couldn't
It
I couldn't
was.
tell, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a really good route. I mean, Forbes was an interesting one to watch today. Kyle and I were talking about this on the side, where he shows his recovery speed a lot, but like, do you want to always be recovering? Not in the
Sure.
NFL, not at this level. So it's going to be something where he's going to have to learn to pick and choose his spots of where he can gamble and not. And it's day one again.
Yeah.
But he Forbes jumps a little bit on it. Terry runs a really nice, what looks to me like a really nice route, coming in, gets Forbes to bite down on it, then comes back out, makes a tough contested catch. And as he's jogging back to the sideline, Bieniemy calls him over. And I was just curious from watching the rep and with your level of expertise, if you have any idea what Eric could have been bringing him over about.
Yeah, he brought Forbes over, you're saying?
He brought Terry over.
Yeah, so on that route, I thought Terry beat him too bad off the line of scrimmage, honestly. Like, he beat him. It was so basically, like, it's like what you'd call like a Venus in Kyle's offense. I don't even know if Kyle still calls it that. But basically, it's like a now route. So it's like a one-step slant and in, and then you're returning out. So everybody in the NFL runs a version of this route. They
Yeah.
just call it something different. And
Peyton
so
Manning famously in one of Peyton's Places shows, they call it the burger route because it was in and out, which
in
I
and
always
out,
thought
sure.
was
Yeah.
cute.
And so, like, basically on that route, like anytime you run a double move for all those kids at home, you don't want to beat them too bad on the first one that you can't get back out of it. And so, like, basically Terry does like a nice little double stick,
Smoked him.
steps left, right, gets Forbes off the spot really nice, then beats his inside hand, runs in hard. And I'm like, if you had the slant here, this is a touchdown. Like, that's how clean the win was, right? And so that is too clean of a win on that. You kind of want a messy win, and then you can shed them off late, and then you want to kind of preserve the out of that. Is what I would say. Like, and again, I don't know what EB's coaching him on,
Yeah.
but if I was
That's
coaching,
what I would. That was what if I had to guess something. That's what I would have guessed.
yeah. And again, like, we don't know, and like, it could be like, hey man, like, nice job or whatever he's saying. But I would say, like, anytime you're running a double move, you don't want to win too bad right away. And Terry beat him very, very cleanly. And so I think that's what I would just say. Hey, Terry, man, like, push up a little bit more, take your time, let him feel like he's got you. So when you separate back out, that throwing window is a little bit better. And it's not this kind of, it was talk about a nice throw by Sam. Holy cow, that was a perfect ball by Sam. So, like, there's throw like that, which, like, literally very tight window, very far throw, only where Terry can get it. Cause on the retread, Forbes is actually in a pretty good spot to, like, break the ball up, but Terry does a great job catching the football because I'm rewatching on the film, and like, did he catch that? But you were right there, so But yeah, I'd say that if I was one coaching point, that's what it would be. Just a little bit messier on the release there.
Yeah, but that's like the kind of detail that does that get cleaned up in years past, and what kind of caliber of coaching are these guys getting? And hey, good job, result fine, but like you mentioned, like, it took a perfect throw from Sam, it took this outstretched diving catch from Terry to be in a place where only he could get it away from
Right.
Forbes. Where if he runs the better version of the route, doesn't win so decisively on the first of the double move, and instead wins decisively on a second, can Sam put it somewhere where he can catch it standing up and get a run up the sideline, maybe even a first down as he's stiff arming a guy like Forbes for 7-8 yards getting pushed out of bounds. So like those are the details that help you win. And I just thought it was interesting that, it's just something that I'm not used to. Like, the offensive coordinator taking the time while he's running the next play to call the star wide receiver over and give him some extra points right then and there. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't necessarily be brought up in the past by a guy like Scott in a meeting room, but it's just a noticeable difference. And, there's only so much to talk about after one day of practice.
Well, yeah, I think that's the other thing is, obviously, like I'm an OC now in high school, and one of the things, like I remember now that I'm in it, you kind of see the value of doing stuff like that. Like, because Kyle was very methodical about that. Hey, man, no, like do it like this. Hey, we got to be here. Here's the timing, and like it's a testament to his genius to be able to hold the plays that he's calling, get the corrections called, and do the next thing. So I think that it's important, man, because the more times you get it as a player, the easier it is for you to make it kind of second nature, right? So like there was a play later where they're running 4 verticals, and I kind of thought to myself, man, if the guy who's number 3 here is a little bit wider, like that's probably a touchdown. And you don't see it on the field, so that's where the meetings are for, right? And I'm just assuming that's the correction they want to make, but that kind of stuff is so important. It's so valuable because it's really the devil's in the details. I think we've talked about this before on the show. It's not like there's no like magic bullet, like there's. If you watch Andy Reid's office, if you watch Kansas City, if you watch Kyle, they do a good job of scheming you up and winning with the pen. But also there's a certain level of detail to like just basic stuff that puts you in a better position to be successful. So I think that's what you're seeing here. And like, that's kind of what you're alluding to there with the EB thing. So I'm super excited. It's early. They didn't do anything crazy offensively today. There's nothing crazy defensively, but that is how you win football games is the detail, right? Because week 7, when they run that route and Terry's open by 10 yards and gets a big completion and is able to run for a 30-yard gain in a 2-minute situation, like that wins you football games. And the more times as a coach you can get that addressed, the more likely the correction's made.
Tag this podcast. We'll insert this part in that podcast in our film breakdown. So defensively, I think to me the most important thing on the day, there's 2 most important things. One is Jamin. We'll circle back to him in a second.
Yeah.
2 is, which is just like, okay, where is he? How does that develop? Something to keep an eye on that maybe we didn't have a pin in before. But I loved seeing Chase out there, sans knee brace, explosive, decisive. I thought he had a good day from what again, you're trying to watch so much at once.
Yeah.
So for all I know, I watched 3 good reps and he actually stunk the rest of practice. But when I was watching him in some of the team periods, I felt like he was more explosive certainly than last year. And he played with like an urgency and, didn't stutter step. He just went, and you'd see him bend and dip around the outside, good hand, work and punch and tackles out of the way. It's hard to know just how effective it is because there's no pads, but I think what you're looking for in these first couple of days without pads, specifically from Chase Young, is there any hesitancy? And the answer was no. And I think that was great to see.
Yeah. I mean, I thought he had a good day. I think, if someone deserves credit, Charles Leno deserves some credit. I thought Leno came out with like just looked good. Leno looked good, very sharp. And, like you said, in these periods, it's really hard to tell like who's winning exactly. Because like there's one where Chase kind of gets a late win, balls out. It's like, that looks like he might be like Chase might be asking for a sack, but I think the ball, you know what I'm saying? So it's tough to see like where he's at. But in terms of movement stuff, I thought it was good. I just want him to be as polished, as like a guy like Montez was today. Like Montez, like looks like he's improved. He's added some stuff to his repertoire. He had a very good understanding of what it took to beat Wiley today. And I think that is something that I'm just kind of waiting for Chase to kind of get into, right? And, it's the first day of practice. So like he's got 3 weeks to kind of figure all that stuff out. But like John Allen, like doesn't miss a beat. Looks like the same guy. Beats some guys on a couple inside moves. That's great, And so like that's kind of, I think it's because everybody else in the group, F.A. Obata, great job rushing from the 3 technique today. All those guys look so good. It's like Chase is still not physically he's fine. It's the technical element that you're kind of saying, all right, when's that going to kind of turn the corner? And I think he's perfectly capable of it. Like I've got all the confidence in the world in Chase, but I'm still kind of waiting to see that, I guess.
Yeah, it's one box you can tick at a time, though, and I guess you could tick them both. He could come out and be technically great and move great, but
Yeah.
I'm happy he at least got one because he did not, even when he played last year, like he wasn't quite as explosive and decisive as
And to,
he had been.
and to kind of follow up on that, like you mentioned, like there's times where he's just running around, like being physically freaky, and I think that
Mhm.
gets him 8 to 12 sacks. You know what I'm saying? So like there's not there this is a good outcome if he's physically ready to go, I guess is what I'm saying. So there's no
Yeah,
reason to be like, "Oh god, Chase is imperfect." It's like physically he had some reps against Leno who like I said, I thought had a very good day. And you're like, "Man, that's almost winning football right there." So he did a good job. Like I'm just saying, like one of my things I'm looking for the rest of the training camp. But good
yeah.
day for him, I think.
Logan Thomas, by the way, also no
Yep.
knee brace today, so good to see both those guys back, feeling like themselves or as good as they can, and not feeling like they need that brace to support. All right, last but not least on the practice front today, what do we make of the fact that Jamin Davis was with the twos most of the day? They rotated a little bit, so I think he did at some point, depending on packages and stuff, get some reps with the ones. But it started as Cody Barton and Khaleke Hudson, and then they were playing exclusively with either a Buffalo or another nickel player. Rashad
Yeah,
Wildgoose got some snaps. Cam Crow got some snaps in the Buffalo nickel. Obviously, the
sure.
twos got out there. Quan Martin was in that spot. So what do you make of that?
Um, I don't know, honestly. Like, because Cam came back and he's back in his normal spot, and Cam and Jamin aren't necessarily the same guy. I think it's the first day. I think they're probably trying to see what it is. And I think I kind of get a feeling, again, I haven't talked to anybody about this. I get a feeling just in how they've handled Jamin in the past that they feel like they need to give Jamin like a little bit of a prod. They can be really hard with him. And I think this might be a way just to be like, hey, man, like nothing is for sure. And like we've talked about, Khaleke Hudson had a very good spring. So, like, you got to earn it back. And I think Jamin he did some stuff that he did really good today. And I think that's good. It's just about continuing to build in that. And I think by the end of this week, you'll probably see him getting more reps with the ones. And probably by the end of camp, he'll be getting even more reps, if not all the reps with the ones. So I think it'll take some time, but I just feel like that's kind of how they've handled him. They've been a little bit aggressive. Is that the right word? I don't know if that's the right word or not. Like a little bit harsh. Like, like
Yeah,
you
I think harsh
coach,
is
like,
the right word. Yeah.
you kind of there's certain guys that respond well to hard coaching, and I kind of feel like they see Jamin in that way, and that's what this to me falls in that category in my opinion.
To me, I criticized them for how they handled Jamin last year, and then I look like an idiot because he was awesome.
Yeah,
But so
yeah,
my 2 cents, take it for what it's worth. I think I would be valuing the cohesion with Cody Barton if I think that's going to be my starting linebacking core. I think I would value getting Jamin those reps and not worry about his motivation at this point.
yeah,
They know more than I do. They know where he's at. There's also an element of like letting him get up to speed, which
yeah.
he was asked about today and said, like, yeah, I'm just trying to get up to speed. And the speed of the twos is going to be a little bit slower than the speed of the ones. And so
Sure.
if he can operate with the twos, get some reps in there, but then and that helps him, long term, fine. I think the other thing that was interesting was he was playing Will with the twos because he was out there with Mayo,
Yeah,
and I kind of anticipated him being the starting middle linebacker for this team. So I am
yep,
very curious to see how that goes over the next couple of days. They have options they like, obviously, with Barton and Mayo's always the kind of their fail safe, but I certainly expected Jamin, after what he did in games in this defense last year as the Mike linebacker, to continue in that role, and to see him not out there with the ones, I hope is just an end to the process of his rehab and not some other game that's being played about a guy who's a first round pick. Like, he's got to be great for them. He was a first round pick. That's why you
yeah.
take first round picks. And if
And
not, I think it speaks poorly of them. Not like that's it, that signed, sealed, delivered fate, but like that definitively goes in the negative category if Jamin Davis is a rotational backup by year 3 after being a first rounder.
yeah, I don't want to we should pump the brakes. It's the first day,
Yeah.
like we're doing a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
speculation. Like, well, we can revisit this. I think revisit that kind of line of thinking. I
Yeah.
think in a
Why
couple
I
days.
said if.
Yeah, but I think but I think that if, in my opinion, like in mini camp and OTAs, they kind of move pieces around, especially in the
Mhm.
back end. You get Quan playing different spots. You get, St. Juice playing different spots. You get Forbes at the nickel, and everyone goes, "Oh God, like what are they doing? What's happening?" But it's like you need like more longitudinal data, right? So for today, that's something to make note of. And if you tune into this podcast, we'll update you on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow or 2 days from now he's playing Mike. And Mayo's, they're going to move those pieces around because ultimately you want to get your best guys on the field. And, Kalik's done a great job. He did a great job in OTAs. He did a great job in the last game of the season against the Cowboys. They're going to, if they can find a way to get the best couple guys on the field, I think they're going to try and do that. So,
yeah, definitely. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. Craig Hoffman here, Logan Paulson there. If you like what you are listening or watching so far, go ahead and hit that like button if you haven't right now. Subscribe as well, or follow if you're listening on Spotify. We appreciate it, and we'll keep giving you this content all training camp long, and then we're back to our 3 times a week schedule during the regular season. So that's still coming down the pike for you to look forward to, or for those of you that found us in the off season. Surprise, we do 3 pods a week during the season. So extra podcasting coming. Also making its debut this week for us will be our, I guess we're calling it like our bonus segment that'll come on the in-between days of the podcast. So a little 5-minute extra bonus, some extra Take Command that'll hit your feed. So if you're not subscribed, you're not going to get that. So that's why you should subscribe. Okay, let's take the final 25 minutes or so on this podcast, Logan, and just kind of look ahead for each position training camp. 2-3 minutes per position gets us home. Some we've obviously talked about a lot more, but what are we looking at between now and the season at each of these position groups? Start with the big one. Start with quarterback. How do we actually fairly judge quarterback play in training camp for Sam Howell, for Jacoby Brissett, and any benchmarks that you have along the way?
Yeah, well, I think, like last year, one of the things that really stuck out to me about Carson in training camp was just kind of how deliberate the process was, how long everything took, how kind of few and far between like completing the football was. And the completions were great, but it was kind of a, use the phrase canary in the coal mine all the time, or we use it all the time. That was a canary in the coal mine for me. It just didn't
the canary died.
It didn't feel right in training camp and OTAs because the timing was weird. The completion percentage was weird. And that's something I'm kind of tempted to do, is to like track all the completions, because it's so easy to come out of practice and be like, oh, he missed this throw, he missed that throw. But I remember in OTAs, I tracked 2 days of practice and I was like, man, he's completing like 75% of his balls. You know what I mean? And so like, even though like your gut is like something weird is happening, like he's completing the football a lot, he's on time, he's making some misses. And I think if he can continue to do that against the defense that knows him really well, and then against Baltimore, an opposing defense, honestly, I think you feel pretty good about him coming into week 1 and what EB's kind of laid the foundation for. So that's kind of my barometer there, is just quarterback efficiency, quarterback timing, and then like really that completion percentage is super important to me. Just being efficient and fastidious with the football. And that is EB. And that's also, kind of how he's utilizing and coaching, but it's also kind of shows a maturation of Sam. So I think that's kind of what I'm looking for from the quarterback spot.
Yeah, I think there's something about a practice setting where every incompletion feels monumental, where it's just like you expect a completion on every down, and then when it doesn't happen and the defense celebrates and the whole thing, as opposed to just being like, okay, back to the huddle, second down, there's like, wow, okay, file that away, and there's this skewing that happens mentally that when you go back and track it and actually look at it, doesn't actually parlay into realistic expectations or fit what you would ever actually evaluate on. So I think that's a really good point about the completion percentage. I think in terms of a benchmark along the way, I want to know whether this competition is open or whether it is closed by the time the joint practices are going, right? Has Sam done enough to be like, he gets every rep against Baltimore with the ones? Or is Baltimore joint practice where you're deciding who your starting quarterback is? And if it's open by then I think Jacoby is going to probably win the job. And if Sam has done enough to shut the door by then obviously it's him. But we're going to see against those by the time we get to those joint practices where we're at. And to me, that's the most significant thing. I'd anticipate Howell winning the job, just to be very, very clear. But if all of a sudden things don't go well for Howell, he's very up and down, and then Brissett's awesome between now and then, I think you use those joint practices to figure out who your starting quarterback is.
I mean, also to that point, though, if he comes in and looks terrible in the joint practice, like the door's probably open after that. You know what I mean? Like if he looks
True.
amazing, and for that 2 day period of practice, it's terrible. Like coaches are funny like that, like it's like, well, maybe he's not where we thought he was at. So I think that's something everyone should have circled on their calendar with regards to the quarterback position. It's just, hey, like, how does that go? And he could be doing really well and do bad in that. He could also be doing really bad and do really good in that. And it could kind of flip either way. So I think that's going to be a really big event, kind of to your point. So
for sure. All right, running back. To me, this is a pretty straightforward position for them. There's not a lot to talk about. I do think it was interesting. Antonio Gibson spoke today post practice to the collective media at the podium. Said he envisions a bit of a third down back role. Said he's really excited about watching Kansas City, not just what they do with the running backs, what they do with everybody. So I anticipate Gibson's a guy that's going to get a lot of usage. But then you've got obviously Robinson and Rodriguez, the bruisers that are going to do a lot of the traditional running. I don't know how much you evaluate that stuff during camp, but that's I kind of think that position's set.
For me, it's just like utilization. It's just like, hey, like, are they going to use him in the passing game? How are they going to use him? Is it going to be kind of as a pseudo wide receiver? Because that's not really what they did in Kansas City. It's like a lot of stuff from the backfield, watching Kansas City film now, a lot of stuff from the backfield, pick routes, and we saw Brian Robinson catch a beautiful ball over the shoulder today. And we saw Gibson do the same thing. So we've got backs who are good football players, good athletes, and I think are kind of what EB is looking for. So I think to your point, like they're both good football players. To me, it's just about utilization. And I think with Chris Rodriguez, it's going to be interesting to see, like, can he kind of find a home on special teams? Because you're not going to keep that guy on the 53, when you've got potentially 4 tight ends on the roster, or potentially an extra offensive lineman, or, maybe you need to keep an extra safety because of the Buffalo nickel role. So that's something I think to keep an eye on. I don't think he's for sure going to be on the 53. But you don't think so? I mean, Jonathan Williams, Patterson, I think he's got to earn that spot, is what I'm saying.
Okay, I think they're keeping 3.
But I'm saying,
but you're saying you're not guaranteeing that he's the third.
Correct. Yes.
Interesting, because you're right. Williams especially has a ton of special teams experience in the NFL and has done it well. Patterson, not as much. So I think he still finds it. Like, I think, you don't draft a guy. What was he, 5th?
So I mean, but like that's not, again, it's
not
not
unheard of. It's not unheard of
with larger practice squad things. Like, I'm just saying, like, in terms of things, we're looking for things to watch. Utilization, and then third running back competition is kind of what I'm saying.
I'm glad you brought up the Robinson thing. That I had forgotten about that. Like his usage in the passing game, first play of the game, or first play of the team period today. Maybe it was 7-on-7. No, it was. I think it was 11 on offensive 11. Like not team, but like they're out there with a mix of backups and coaches playing as defense, but they ran a screen, right?
Yeah.
And like knowing that Robinson is going to catch a lot of balls this year by design, and then just how they use him as a check down obviously is kind of standard, but that there's going to be real design stuff for him as a pass catcher, I think is very different than what we thought a year ago, when it's like, this guy's a bruising running back who's going to run between the tackles, and you realize he's a lot more than that. I think the utilization piece is obviously the other biggest thing at wide receiver. How much do they move around Terry, Jahan, and Curtis? And then I think Diami's pretty locked in at 4. And then we'll see who wins the 5th spot. That's going to be really tough to tell, because it's going to be a large part of special teams decision. But that to me is the utilization piece is the biggest question at wide receiver.
Yeah, utilization, and not even really for Terry and Jahan for me, because I know they're going to find ways to get those guys touches. It's more like Curtis. Like, where does he fit in the whole big picture of this offense as the third guy? Because I think he's really competing also kind of with the second and third tight ends. And like, when you look at Kansas City, they're not opposed to kind of throwing 3 tight ends out there. Here's 2 tight ends. And, so or here's an extra back. We're going to be in 21 personnel. Like, so he's got to, I think, kind of show that he adds value in a unique way, which I think he will. But that's another thing, is kind of that, third, the Gibson, Curtis, maybe Cole Turner, Curtis Hodges, that kind of group who kind of separates themselves. And I think they all 3 kind of get some stuff, but I think the volume of stuff that they get is something just to kind of keep an eye on as we go through training camp.
Yeah. I mean, I still am interested. Like, Terry hasn't lined up in the slot a lot in his career. And I think that's going to happen a lot more, because I think what they will do is take some of the stuff they had for Travis Kelce and not all of it
Sure.
translates because some of it's like, no, we're getting Kelsey on a linebacker because he's a tight end. But some of that stuff is like they found ways to scheme him open, even though he's the best player and the defense theoretically is focused on him. I think there's going to be some of that stuff they try to do with Terry and the way they use him in bunches and stacks and all those different kinds of alignment tricks that Bieniemy has up his sleeve. I think is something that we'll start to see a little bit during camp. Like if he's starting to bust wide open all the time in training camp, I think that's great. If he's not, I'm not worried because they might be saving some of that for the season.
Yeah.
But that to me is the kind of the usage piece that I am intrigued with,
Sure.
even if it's not like a major, they're going to fail, type of question. All right. Tight end, obviously Logan is the number one. Bates kind of has his role. And then you got the two young guys competing out. Anything other than just the general competition? And I guess you kind of just touched on it too. Do they keep three? Do they keep four?
Yeah.
And who is that fourth tight end actually competing with for a roster spot?
Yeah, and I think it's so funny. Both those young guys flash, but they also flash kind of their inexperience a little bit at times. Like Curtis today had an excellent route, like on a seam where he kind of widens, double sticks. The DB gets really wide, and there's a perfect ball to the seam, and he just can't quite pull the ball in. And you're like, like to make like everything about that is A+ excellent, but we got to finish the play. You know what I mean? And if you're going to make the varsity, you're going to make the 53, you got to be making those plays consistently enough where the coordinator's like, I trust that he's going to be that guy. So again, first day, but I mean, that's something from those young guys. I just want to see a certain level of consistency. Like even Cole actually during OTAs and mini camp and even today, like a little bit more, like not a lot, but a little bit more drop prone than he was last year at this time. So kind of coming into that, I really think Logan looks ready to go, man. Like he had an excellent catch today in 2 minutes where he kind of dove for the football. It was a really, really tough catch, made a great play. He's feeling zones well. You can tell he understands kind of how to pick on certain concepts, how to create space. And I feel like he's just super dialed in from a route running standpoint. They haven't run the ball a lot yet, but I think that's what you got Bates for. So I'm very confident in Logan. I think Bates, they'll find a way to use that skill set. I think Bates catches the ball well too. Although he did have a drop today that led to a pick, not really his fault, kind of a PI situation. But to me, it's the consistency from those two young guys because that is going to be huge. Like if they can develop the way I think they can develop just based on their physical traits, like they should be on the field more, but they got to be consistent enough to get that done. So.
Also did not have this one on the bingo card. John Bates forced the first fumble of training camp as he ran into one of his wide receiver teammates who had the ball and it popped out on the first play of or one of the first plays.
No, I thought the ball was thrown to him and it got tipped up right off of his hands, or
there was one of those too, but like there was a play. I think it was literally the first play. Maybe they were still in 7-on-7 even. But it was like literally, I think the first play that Reds versus Whites was happening, and
ball came out.
Catches the ball over the middle. Defender, I think, shoves Bates into the receiver, and the play was mostly dead at that point. The receiver had gone down, but like. And the intensity was not ratcheted all the way up. The focus was not all the way up, but Bates wound up running into the receiver and the ball just like squirted out. And I was like, oh, didn't have that one on the bingo card. John Bates, first forced fumble at training camp. All right, last thing for the offense, and we'll flip sides of the field in terms of what we're looking for in training camp is the biggest question, and that is the offensive line. I mean, left guard is the big one, Sadiq versus Chris Paul. But also I think how quickly can they make that decision and gel as a 5-man unit? I think that is a major question.
Yeah, it's a major question for me. Cosme, I thought had a pretty good day today. I think he had one miss, but out of 50 plays, that's probably okay. Or whatever, it was 22 team plays. So yeah, it's probably okay. Wiley and Montez kind of got the better of that today. That's something I really want to see because I think Wiley's a good football player. It's just like, can he handle elite pass rushers? And he's going to get an opportunity to show that over the course of the next couple of days, right? Whether he's up to the task, obviously Super Bowl, great performance by him. He can do it, but obviously in the context of EB helping him out. So that's something I'm going to keep an eye on. Cosme moving to guard. Nick Gates did a good job today. Sadiq probably rough day today, and he's going against John Allen. He's going against FA. He's going against guys with some real pass rush juice at 3 technique. Payne, when Payne's in there, he's going to be going against that too. So he's going to get a little bit of a baptism by fire. I thought he had a nice OTA period, but a little inconsistent today. And again, the big question mark. Leno looked great today for all fans. I'd say 3 of the 5 guys had really good days today. Really, really good. And then, 2 guys are going to get better tomorrow, and that's totally fine. It's first day of practice, so
Yeah, and the two guys were going against primarily John Allen and Montez Sweat. It's like,
correct.
good luck having a good day. But eventually, like you do need to do it, because like you don't get to not play on the days or be like, that was really hard on the days where you face someone who's really good. And when you got, the guys on the D lines in this division, you think of the guys in New York, the guys in
Yeah,
Philly,
I guess
how
what
they
I'm
move around
saying.
the guys in Dallas. Like
Yeah,
I'm not worried
yeah,
because of one day. I'm worried because these guys are inexperienced and haven't proven anything, but I'm not more worried today than I was yesterday.
right,
But at some point you do need to have better days. And if it's just every day for the next 2 weeks, it's like, yeah, he didn't have a very good day, but what are you going to do? He's facing John Allen. It's the NFL.
sure,
There's not a lot of guys as good as John Allen, but there are some, and the guys that are worse aren't that much worse. So you
right.
gotta just eventually have some better days.
But I think Sadiq has shown he can be a little streaky like that, and tomorrow he
Mhm.
might come back and look like a baller, which is very Sadiq-ish. And again, talk about a guy who'd be nice if he was a little bit more consistent. The Wiley thing, I'm not that worried about because he's a pro. He knows what it takes. Like he'll
Totally.
figure it out. And it's the first time he's really getting like he's seeing Montez a lot. Like Montez came for like 2 days of mini camp and like they didn't really practice. So there's a learning curve there as well. So I'm not that worried about it. But it is something that I'm watching. So every time we talk about this, I'm gonna be like, hey, so and so had this happen, right? And it's more just kind of saying like where that group is at. And I also want to make it very clear that I do think that EB can really elevate that group. So
Yeah.
again, like it's even though we've talked about our concerns, I also think you're going to get a little bump because of the play calling. So we'll see first day, but that's a group I'm definitely going to be watching very closely.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulson. Let's move to the defensive side now. Training camp preview. We talked about linebacker a little bit already earlier in the show, but let's dive in a little bit deeper on D line and the D backs. So defensive line, one, you got to get Deron Payne back, had a minor toe issue. Okay, cool. But I also think one of the things, as we were just talking about the O-line, that benefits this defensive line is it's a bunch of guys that have played together. There's continuity. And today, like, I don't know, I felt like the defense won the day overall. Again, it's first day. It is what it is. Typically, defense is ahead of offense. But typically, even more typical than that is the unit that has continuity is going to beat the unit that doesn't on day one, because it's just, hey, we're back on the bike. We're back in together and we're ready to get going. And the unit that doesn't have that experience is figuring things out. So for this D line unit, I mean, I'm get out of camp healthy. I don't have a lot that I'm really looking for here beyond that.
To me, it's the depth pieces. It's Chase. How Chase progresses over the next couple of days. Big Phil looked good today. Ridgeway looked good today. I mean, shoot, name it. FA had a great day today. Rushing from the 3 technique spot, which is great to see. So, Casey James had their ups and downs, but I'd say on the whole, plus days for them. So it's really the depth for me in that group, and like, are they healthy? Because like it's got to be one of the best positions in football. Quite honest. I mean, like I can't think of a one that's got the starters up top, the depth pieces with the experience that they have, and kind of the youth combined with the experience. It's just a really cool group. And so talk about, kind of being the backbone of your team. Like as long as they come out with all 10 fingers and all 10 toes, I don't think there's that much to be worried about.
No. And like the worries are, can some of the question marks elevate them from good to great or even excellent to like best in the league? If Chase is more than just a streaky player and he's excellent week in and week out, this unit's gross. If Phil Mathis comes in and provides incredible run support and, or is a true option to give John and Deron a rest without too much of a drop off, like that becomes a massive weapon. If KJ Henry provides some pass rush juice as a rookie, like all of a sudden you are elevating this very, very, very good group on the basis of solid play from some of those depth pieces and then really, really good play from Payne, Allen, and Sweat to maybe the best in football. Like lines like San Francisco and there's some, Philly certainly have some stuff to say about like who's the best top to bottom. But like if those questions are answered in the affirmative, I wouldn't put anybody above this group.
I feel the same way. And also want to say this goes back to the offensive line a little bit. So sorry to retread, but also they don't have pads on. So the
Yes.
defensive line should look really good, and the offensive line should look like they're not that good. Like they should be struggling because it's just hard. Like you rely so much as a pass protector and as a run blocker on those shoulder pads to kind of as a surface area for contact. So it makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, I totally agree with you. If Chase turns the corner, if Montez, like I felt like he looked super sharp today, he looked really, really dialed in. Like he's poised, I think, for a big, big year, contract year. Keep an eye out on him. And then, just look, they have a guy who can stop the run in Ridgeway, who's one of, I think it could be one of the best in the league, like after his performance last year in terms of that skill set. Big Phil looked like he's moving around well. Again, FA, man, like holy cow, looked great today. And then James and Casey, like you have 2 starting players as your backup guys. Like that group is, again, like we can't say enough good things about them. Get out healthy, develop a little bit, and watch out.
Linebacker, I think watching Barton is going to be super interesting
Yeah.
as we get going here. Like, how good can he be? Obviously, then it's kind of the same question for all of them. Khalid, can he be good? I don't know. Dallas game he was. But what about consistency? And then obviously Jamin coming on. We talked about that earlier. Anything else to really add at that linebacker spot?
Yeah, I think that's the big one is Jamin and Kalik for me, right? Cody, obviously, because we don't know him that well, but like, what does that room look like week 1? Because right now I'm a little surprised at how it's been organized. A little surprised, but also like, who is? I guess this kind of goes with safety, but who's the Buffalo nickel? Who's the like that kind of? I guess falls under linebacker to a certain extent because I'm curious to see how that all ends up shaking out. So
For sure. And all right, so then you get to the secondary, which I thought was super interesting
yeah,
today. They mixed and matched quite a bit on the back end. The first full reps of team, it was Fuller and St. Just on the outside. Forbes not on the field. They come back around for the second group of plays with the ones. Forbes is out there. St. Just is not. Fuller seemed to be the consistent guy who was out there. That could change tomorrow. But in terms of who got reps in the slot, who didn't, BSJ was back in the slot for some reps today. And then you have Cam Curl playing Buffalo nickel. Rashad Wildgoose was the number 1 corner, like pure corner, who played in that nickel spot today, or whatever that's worth. And I think they really liked his spring, by the way, Rashad Wildgoose. So
he had a good spring.
Not a guy that we should just assume isn't going to make the roster now that everyone's healthy. But then you do have Quan Martin floating in the background consistently in that nickel spot with the 2s. I can't tell what time he's playing a Buffalo role and what time he's just the nickel. But he was the inside slot guy for a lot of today. So that was kind of the run of play for today. I'm assuming we're watching that rotation carefully, and then we'll see from there. That would be my what am I actually watching for binoculars out for training camp?
Yeah, what are they doing? Forbes' development, how he goes against those kind of receiving core of the Commanders. Quan is a guy that I just want to know what they're going to do with him. Like, because like you said, he's like he's a true slot sometimes by formation. He's technically in the box, but I wouldn't classify him as a Buffalo nickel necessarily. But can he fill that role? Cam back, it was great to see him back. He looked great, looked healthy, looked dialed in.
He was the recipient of one of those picks, I think, one of the tip ball picks.
The tip ball, maybe, yeah. And blitzed well, good feet, had like a really crazy turn on a crossing route. I don't know how he got his feet quite right, but he did it. Great job by him. So yeah, and then the young guys like Percy and Forrest, like it's a cool group to talk about because they've all kind of uber talented athletes, with a good physicality and edge to them. And then it's like, where do they all fit? Like, who's the odd man out? Who's in? Who's going to be playing a lot of football? Who's not? Because, in spring, they had Forrest playing some Buffalo. You know what I mean? It just is like, what's the rotation going to be? Who's going to settle in where? Because they've got a lot of pieces back there. And, in the spring, man, we've talked about it a ton. They were awesome in the spring. Really excellent in the back end. So, can they continue that? And, where do the chips settle kind of thing?
The one thing that I think is going to continue to stand out that I noticed it today for sure, and then Forrest talked about it when he was at the podium afterwards, is they just have a ton of speed in that back end.
Yeah.
Which is not what this team has been. I mean, there's been a couple of guys over the years, like when Monte Nicholson was here and had 5 games of looking like he was awesome. Like that 4.3 speed he brought to the safety position mattered. He could get sideline to sideline. But, talk about Cam even, not a guy that you necessarily think of as a blazer, but his anticipation plus his above average speed lets him run across the field on a crossing route with Terry McLaurin at one point today. And I was like, who just ran with that was Cam. Oh my God. And so you see some of that is raw speed. Some of that is anticipation. Some of that is communication. Hey, he's coming across, and you can get a head start with good communication as obviously offenses are trying to put you in conflict. And Forrest said it afterwards. He's like, I don't really care where I play. I don't care who's out there. But, I think actually the question was about he and Cam. He's like, when Cam and I are out there, you got two guys that can run all over the place and make plays. And that is where this team has lacked so severely the last couple of years. Even while they've been good and at times very good defensively, they have not created the turnovers that you want out of an elite defense. And I think with the addition of Forbes and the team speed that they have at the safety position, you can definitely get more of that, and the physicality they bring for the safety position, you can get more of that this year, which will be good.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, and that's why it's such a fun group. I mean, it's unique in terms of potential. So can't wait to see what they're going to bring. Can't wait to watch more practice. We'll have a better idea what's going on with them. Probably, what do you think? Probably 5 days when they put the pads on. I would think like that's kind of the next.
Yeah,
big marker.
I think that they can't put them on for the first 3. So early next week should be pads. It might be 4. I can't remember the rules.
Yeah.
Someone I'm sure watching knows. Someone listening knows. John Keim, if you're listening, you can leave a comment on the YouTube. But in the next couple of days,
or you just text us, John, if you are listening. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But yeah, I think pads is the next big one. And then you kind of eventually you get to this point where you feel like you've been out there forever and there's no end in sight. And then you look at the calendar and you're 4 days from the first preseason game. And that's kind of the next barometer.
Yep.
Then obviously you got the joint practices, Baltimore game, final practices at training camp, things get real, final preseason game, 90-man roster cut. And then you kind of have this, I don't know, this really bizarre 2-week period between the season. It's almost like a bye week. Last year, I decided to go get married. I won't do that again because I'm still happily married, but I will celebrate my anniversary during that time. And then it's here. So you go for, it's just this very, I don't know if you felt that as a player. I'm sure you felt it more intensely as a player, actually, than I did ever as a media member. But like this first stretch at camp, there's all this excitement to get out there. And then there's just gets to this point where you're like, dear God, can we see another uniform?
Yeah, I mean, as a player, like you kind of feel like it's Groundhog Day, and you just kind of get in this mode. Like I was talking to, like I did like an O-line seminar with Will Montgomery recently, and we had it was late. It was like it started at 6:30, and we watched kind of film and did football stuff till like 9. He's like, "Doesn't this feel like camp?" And I was like, "It does feel like camp." You just get in this groove of like it's football 24/7. There's nothing else to think about, nothing else to talk about. And eventually, like you said, you kind of perk your head up out of the hole and you're like, holy cow, we're like 4 days away from something really important and really big in terms of establishing the roster and establishing a lot of guys' futures. So it is a crazy time of year for players. And I think, obviously for media members alike.
For sure. All right. Coming up next week on the show, obviously continuing coverage of training camp. We'll get some of our buddies on. It was good to see a lot of media folks out there today. I talked to a couple already that have agreed to come on. So we'll have some guests covering Commanders camp. We'll try to get you some interviews as well, working with the PR staff on that. Hopefully we can get that organized. And then, as I said, we're going to do some bonus episodes as well, kind of on the off days between the big episodes. So make sure that you're subscribed to us here at Take Command, wherever you watch or listen, in order to get those episodes. That's it, and that's all for today. For Logan, I'm Craig, and we'll see you next time on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do it.
Very, very smart.